This is Derrick Broze. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. I'm here in Standing Rock.
That man is wanted in 5 different countries: Chile, Argentina, Brazil.
We've been fighting a long time. We have all lost so very much. So many loved ones gone.
Don't you fucking tease that horse!
You are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. Above all, stay alive. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network. And today is December 30th, 2024. It's almost New Year's Eve, 2025. And tonight's show is all about my top most important articles, video reports, and interviews of 2024. I hope you guys will stick around for this show tonight. I think it's going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of news that you probably missed, important stories, both positive and negative, that you probably missed, even if you are an avid listener of independent alternative media, because I do pride myself on the different stories that I focus on, not just catching, just following every single trending topic of the week and chasing down every conspiracy theory, but trying to actually dig deep into the research of what's going on in our world, both domestically in the United States and Mexico, North America, and across the world. So that's what tonight's show is going to be all about. And I want to remind all of you guys, if you are new here, first of all, my name is Derrick Broze. Again, I run theconsciousresistance.com. If you've never visited theconsciousresistance.com, I would invite you to go visit it immediately and to bookmark it, because this is the best way to truly to find my content. Going into 2025, I'm approaching now my 16th year of what we would call awake, and my 15th year of being an activist and trying to do something about, all the craziness in the world. And from there, probably about 14 years of getting into journalism and taking it seriously since 2012, launching the Conscious Resistance Network in 2013. This is the best place for all of my content, guys. Documentaries, podcasts, articles, interviews, books. You can pick up Conscious Resistance shirts if you want to support us. You can buy my books through here. You can learn more about agorism, my presentations. We have this beautiful site that we've built up. We're going to be upgrading even further in 2025, including for those who are watching on screen, all these different categories of work. We're going to have to add some more of them because I've covered a lot of work over the last 15 plus years, and we have it easily broken down by topic, though, journalistically. And I just invite you guys to subscribe to my email list and keep up with what I'm doing. Also, if you see here at the top of the navigation bar, it says tour. That is just the place for, if you're ever curious, if you want to meet me in person, connect in person, share ideas, exchange ideas and whatever else, you can check out that tour page at theconsciousresistance.com/tour and find out where I'm going to be speaking at. So, for example, this year I've spoke in the United States a couple of times. I spoke in Costa Rica a couple of times. And I also spoke in the UK and Denmark and, of course, in Mexico. And later this week, this page will be updated with all of my upcoming talks for 2025. So far, I'm going to be speaking at the People's Reset in Mexico next month. And then I'll also be speaking at the Conscious Life Expo, which is kind of like a little new age for my usual taste, but I'm going to go there because I want to reach people everywhere. I'll be at the Conscious Life Expo in Los Angeles. And then I'm speaking at something called Awaken Earth Festival in Costa Rica. And that one will be cool. So, I'm going to be doing some more talks. I might even do a tour of the United States again in 2025. For those of you who remembered, I've done 4 tours now. I did one in 2017, 2018, 2021, and then another one across Mexico. We might do another shorter tour of the United States and traveling the country, connecting with like-minded people, spreading positive ideas, trying to get people motivated, activated, inspired. Because, a lot of people are falling for false solutions like politics. As obviously you guys know, we're just a few weeks away as we go into 2025 from Donald Trump coming into office, and things are going to be interesting. Now, before we start covering some of my top stories, I do want to say on that particular point, as far as forecasting what 2025 could look like, I'm not a Nostradamus, and I don't, I'm not going to make any predictions of what's going to happen. Instead, we're going to do a year in review today. But I did post something on social media yesterday that maybe is relevant. And as far as people who are looking forward to 2025 and trying to suss out what's going to happen. And what I wrote was, I've seen many people expressing their belief or assumption that 2025 is going to be a hectic year, from the general expectation of chaos as Trump returns to war on the horizon, fake alien invasions, and or new claimed pandemics. Lots of people are expecting the worst. And while I also share some of these concerns, it's important to recognize how much of this is out of your hands. Also, when I look at my own personal life, 2025 is going to be an amazing year. I know it's going to be a beautiful year. I know I'm going to be working on adding more members to our Conscious Agora Eco Village community that we're building out here in Mexico. We're going to start building our homes. I'm going to finish the Pyramid of Power. I've already done my part for chapter 16. I'm working on chapter 17. That'll be coming out in the first couple months of 2025, completing a nearly 5-year project. I'm going to be making more music, traveling to new places. I'm going to, like I said, maybe do another tour and continue my spiritual journey. So I invite everybody who's listening to the show tonight to reflect on the ways in which your personal world may improve in 2025, rather than obsessing over the ways the external world might, keyword might, go wrong. Don't forget they, and who are they? The hierarchy enslaving you. Don't forget the hierarchy enslaving you wants to pump our minds and hearts full of fear, so we might live in a low vibrational fear state from which we cannot think straight or properly plan for the future. So those are just a few of my thoughts that I shared as far as 2025, because I'm just seeing across the internet, maybe you guys are seeing something different, lots of anticipating the worst. And I mean, how could you not, right? I mean, things have been pretty fucked up for a while, but they're getting more and more messed up as the days go. And I mean, I do this for a living on a daily basis, reporting, journalism, asking the hard questions, confronting politicians, doing different things like that, and kind of living in this world quite a bit. But it can be heavy, but at the same time, I do have hope and optimism for what's to come. So, all right, before we dive into the topic of tonight, we're going to start with, let me see what we'll start with. We're going to start with my most important articles. So we'll talk about that in just a second, but I want to play you guys a quick clip. This is a promotion for the People's Reset Mexico, which is happening in just 30 days from today, as I'm recording this, for episode 147 of the Conscious Resistance. This is a huge activation, an in-person gathering. I'm not just talking about it because I'm going to be because I am organizing it and because I speak at it, but also because truly, I mean, I have this sense that so many of you out there, maybe not in my audience, but I expect even in my audience, who are aware of what's going on in the world, don't necessarily have community. And what I mean by that is maybe you're not a part of an activist group that goes out and does things together, or meets up once a month, or has dinners at the very least, and has some sort of social aspect. Maybe you're one of the many people that feel very alone and you can't talk about the things you feel strongly about with your family and friends. That is why it's so important to have local community. And I know a lot of people say, well, Derrick, I live somewhere and there's nobody here. I'm the only person, everybody else is asleep. And I think a lot of times we feel that way, and that might not always actually be the case. But if that is the case, that's also why we invented freedomcells.org, a place where you can go search and find like-minded people in your area, not just for another social network, but to connect and meet in person and start getting organized, start working on goals and accomplishing things. And if everybody did that on a local level in a decentralized manner, we will create the better world that we know is possible outside of fake politicians and criminal banks and things of that sort. But that takes effort. And I know a lot of people don't even want to make the effort. But for those of you who do, I highly encourage you in 2025, if you have not taken the steps yet, take the steps necessary to get involved in your local community. I'm not going to tell you what that means. I'm not saying politics. In fact, I'm not encouraging politics unless you feel like running for the local school board, you could really make a difference or something like that. I mean, getting connected to know what are the issues going on in your community. Say, for example, let's just break this down. And I'm kind of going off on a rant, a tangent here, but I think this is important, so we'll stick with it. Let's say that you're somebody who cares about the United Nations and globalism and national and individual sovereignty. Okay. You need to understand that those policies that the United Nations and the World Economic Forum talk about, they may talk about them on a high level, on the international level, but the way they are implemented and enforced on you in your life is on the local level, through the local school board, through the local county commissioner court, or the city council, or the mayor, or the governor, et cetera. And so again, not saying go be a politician, but it would behoove you to be aware of what's going on in your local community. So you can say, oh, look, the city council is trying to pass this 5G thing or this surveillance thing, or they're trying to push 15-minute cities. I need to get together with my local activists and like-minded people. We need to show up. We need to push back. We need to protest. We need to pass out flyers. You need to do whatever you got to do, right? That's up to you. My point is, we need more people to be involved locally. I live a lot of my life on the internet. I'm going to be real. Because of my work, I spend way too much time on the computer. And I see other people out there. I'm like, man, you're on the computer all the time and you're not necessarily a researcher. I guess you're just on the computer all the time, or on your phone or on the internet. And we need to leave those digital tools behind in 2025. I'm not saying completely. I know many of you won't abandon your phones. I don't have a phone. But we do need to leave them behind a bit and say, okay, let's go meet in person. Let's connect face to face. I say all that to say, the People's Reset is a great way to do so. We're literally going to have 300 to 400 people from 15 plus countries, including the United States, Canada, Mexico, UK, across Europe, and always new places. It's completely streamed for free online. That's great for those who can't come. But if you can come, stop making excuses and make it happen. You got 30 days to get down here. Mexico is cheap. Food's cheap. Housing's cheap. The ticket's cheap. Your most expensive thing is going to be your flight, but you can make it happen. And you can come hang out for 5 days or maybe a full week if you can take off work. And look, I get it. There's excuses. I could never do that. I don't have time, work, blah, blah. But if you want to make it happen, you will. There's no time for excuses anymore. And you come connect with hundreds of people who are thinking like you. Come get inspired, come get motivated, learn from the speakers, participate in the music and the networking. And there's going to be ayahuasca ceremonies and all kinds of, this is a holistic event, activists organizing, permaculture, growing food, getting off big tech, using digital tools, but in a private way that protects your liberty and your privacy, how to get your homestead started, how to buy land, how to organize your community. It is a very holistic event, and I'm honored to be one of the organizers. I've been involved for 5 years. We launched this in 2021 as a way to give people some real hope and show them that change is possible. So with all that said, before we start covering my top stories, check out this quick little 1-minute promo of the People's Reset, which is happening January 29th to the February 2nd in central Mexico, right here where I live in Morelia, Mexico. Tickets are on sale right now for a New Year's Eve sale for just $189 for 5 days for 30-something speakers. It's an amazing deal. Check this out. We'll be right back. All right. Like I said, that's the People's Reset, thepeoplesreset.org, thegreaterreset.org. Check it out, guys. I invite you to come if you can. If not, seriously, though, get involved locally, even if you can't come down to Mexico. But I encourage you to watch the event. It's the entire event is streamed for free. All of the talks are posted for free on our Odyssey channel. So, I actually counted today. We have more than, I forgot already, but I think it was like something like 400 talks available on the Odyssey channel. These are all solutions focused talks. So if you're on Odyssey platform, search the Greater Reset, or just go to thegreaterreset.org or thepeoplesreset.org and get the info. So, all right, let's go ahead. We're going to jump into my top stories of 2024. Now, let me break this down for you guys just a little bit. So for those who don't know, but I write articles for The Last American Vagabond. So we're going to first do my most important articles, and I've narrowed that down to 5 main stories. We're going to go through some of those highlights. Then we're also going to cover, besides my articles that I write for The Last American Vagabond, I also do interviews specifically for the Conscious Resistance. And so we're going to cover my top interviews of 2024. And I've broken those down by different categories, and we'll go through each one. I'm not going to be playing clips from every single one, but I am going to show you just the links to them. And all of this will be posted at theconsciousresistance.com in the show notes for tonight's show. So I'm going to cover a whole bunch of links. And so if you're curious and you want to check these out and see what I've been up to in 2024, then you're going to want to go to the show notes. And then we also have my most important video reports of 2024. So again, I write articles for The Last American Vagabond. I do interviews for the Conscious Resistance, and I do my own video reports on the Conscious Resistance as well. So we're going to go over those. And then finally, my most important talks of 2024. I gave, I think, 10 talks in 2024, and I just want to highlight 3 of them. And that's what we're going to focus on tonight. So without further ado, my top 5 stories, I'll just list them off the bat and then we'll get into them. My top 5 stories. Now, this isn't to say these are the most important stories in the world at any point at any time or anything like that. Obviously, any given day of the week, there's a lot happening and you could point to any number of stories. So in an entire year of 12 months, there's a lot that happens. So I'm specifically focused on my stories, things that I chose to cover, things that I was firsthand reporting on, and being one of the few people to report on them. Some of these involve stories that I've been keeping up with over the years, and others are new things that popped up in 2024. Now, I want to say right away, though, what I did not mention, because although I covered and talked about Israel and Zionism and the continued massacre of the Palestinians by the Israeli Zionist nation, the genocide, although I've talked about it and mentioned it throughout my social media, and I did some video reports, it's not something I chose to keep an eye on every single day, every week, like many people out there. And I give credit to people like Ryan, Last American Vagabond, The Gray Zone, and many other outlets who did stay on like the daily fucked up stuff happening and coming out of Israel and Palestine. That is obviously one of the big stories of the year. That happened in late 2023. So for this entire year now, we've been watching people get killed. And on social media, it's in a way that we've never been able to see before. So, I think that it's just, it's crazy. It's a sad thing. It's a sad state of affairs. But if you guys have been keeping up with social media, you've seen it as well. I mean, it's been all over Instagram, all over TikTok, all over Twitter, pictures of dead children, videos of people getting killed. I mean, it's just been horrific. So, I think that obviously is one of the big stories of 2024. But as I said, that wasn't my main focus, and plenty of other people have covered that better than myself. So I'm not going to include that in my list. But in my top 5 stories of 2024, the fluoride lawsuit resumed, and we won the lawsuit. We're going to get into that in just a moment. So the fluoride trial resumed in February. You guys know I was the only journalist who stayed for the entire trial, the entire hearing in San Francisco, and we'll talk about that. My second, my second top story of 2024, Bethany Christian Services and the adoption industry complex. This is another story that was brought to me by my listeners. I often have people listen to me. I see Kate is out there listening. Thank you, Kate, for all your support over the years and for being a part of my work. And people will reach out and share their story or share information they have. That is one of these kinds of stories. I'd never heard of Bethany Christian Services. Of course, I figured the foster system and the adoption industry are messed up. I've done reporting in the past on the CPS and Child Protective Services and all that craziness, but I'd never done a real deep dive focus on that. And I did this year with Bethany Christian Services and the adoption industry complex. That's my second top story of 2024. The third top story is the Summit of the Future. Nobody else other than, obviously, there was 2 other people besides myself that I can really think of that really focused on the Summit of the Future. Jakob Nordengard and, Dan Aston Gregory. So maybe a handful of us. I would say 5 people or less were actively focused on the Summit of the Future. I was writing about it since last year in 2023. And as we're going to cover tonight, I was just giving anybody who would listen all the information they needed to know about what was coming up, from months ahead to weeks ahead to days ahead. I went to New York City. I was in the United Nations there during the Summit of the Future, and I did reporting on that. That's my third top story of the future, of 2024. My fourth top story is Biden's final year / Biden's legacy. And again, this is a little mainstream of politics, but I think it is important, and I will be writing an article probably this week or in the coming weeks about Biden's legacy. And I have covered this, for all the people who tried to criticize me for calling out Trump and saying, oh, you never talk about Biden, the Democrats. If you paid attention, I called out Biden for plenty of things over the years. So that's the other top story, is that Biden's going to basically just drift off into the, eventually he's going to pass away. And this guy's basically been used as a puppet, right? And he's been steered around, and who knows what really happened behind the scenes. Maybe one day we'll find out, but that doesn't mean he nor the people who are using him as a puppet and the people within his administration making decisions should be forgotten or should be allowed to make excuses. No, we should hold their feet to the fire. So we're going to talk about that. And then the fifth big story of 2024, as far as, again, my reporting, is the great inversion, what I call the great inversion. And that is the continued false awakening, the co-opting of the freedom, liberty, truth, conspiracy, health freedom movement via Donald Trump, Elon Musk, RFK Jr., Peter Thiel, Bilderberg people, technocrats, Zionists, etc., and fooling people into think like, we won, the freedom movement has won, Trump got the White House, oh my God, after everything they tried to do, we beat them, and now, in 3 weeks, we're going to find out what's going to happen. And, I would love to be proven wrong, but I think that not only does history tell me I'm not going to be wrong, but also already looking at Trump's picks and the people he's associated with and the people he's funded. I talked a lot about that this year. That's my other big story, the great inversion and all the different examples of the great inversion. So we will cover those top 5 stories one more time. The fluoride lawsuit resuming, the Bethany Christian Services and the adoption industry complex, the United Nations Summit of the Future, Biden's final year and his legacy, and the great inversion, the co-opting of the freedom movement. Those are my top 5 stories that I specifically focused on this year and did multiple articles. These are all based on articles that I've written in the last 12 months here. And then just really quickly, a couple of honorable mentions. Of course, the Trump assassination attempt. I did write an article right afterwards. I only wrote one article. I chose not to go fully down that rabbit hole, but I wrote right away when it was obvious to me that there's plenty of questions that were immediately there and still have not been answered. And so that's one. And then I wrote another article about the co-opting of Bitcoin. And that's another one that I think it's a theme that you'll hear come up again more and more. But let's go ahead and start with my fluoride story. Again, we're covering my top articles, interviews, and video reports of 2024. So let's go ahead and get started. This first one, we're going to look at a few of my articles related to the fluoride lawsuit. Like I said, I've been one of the only people covering the fluoride lawsuit since it first began in 2020. And I'm grateful for that. I mean, to me, this is an important issue. I stuck on it. And, one of the problems I will say, just, while I'm speaking out loud here with independent media, and that I wish that you guys out there as viewers and listeners and readers would demand better of, is that you'll listen to all kinds of shows. It's like these people are talk shows like this, right? I just do this once a week. I'm not trying to be in your ear every day, acting like I know everything about the world. People will cover one story one day and be like, oh, there's a fluoride lawsuit or there's this fluoride study. And then they never talk about it again. They move on to whatever's trending the next day, whatever's hot that week. And I'm not naming any names. There's a lot of good people who maybe have this style, but still do some good reporting. I'm just saying, for me, that ain't my thing. But I think it's important as independent journalists that we stay consistent. And when you get a hold of a story, you don't just let it go. I mentioned Kate earlier, Kate's story, related to the David Hamblin case, the Utah ritual abuse case. That's something another case that I was the only one reporting on and will continue to report on. So it's important when I think, let me just speak for myself, as an independent journalist, that when you find a story, don't just write about it one time and move on with the rest of your life. Like, stay on it for your audience and stay consistent and communicate with them and show them the evolution of a story. That's what I try to do. So maybe for some people it can be tiresome, but I think it's important that I can show you a legacy of all the articles I've written about the fluoride trial since 2020. And so the fluoride trial was put on hold in late 2020. And I'm not going to retell the whole story because I've got so many videos and articles talking about it. But basically, after a couple of years of waiting, the lawsuit resumed in February going into March. And as I said earlier, I was there. So I have this article, Everything You Need to Know About Week 1 of the second phase of the fluoride lawsuit. And I got another one, Week 2 of the fluoride lawsuit. EPA rests their case, admits harm related to fluoride exposure. Again, I was probably the only person really staying on that and keeping people aware of that you didn't hear that in the New York Times or anywhere else, that the EPA actually did admit, yes, okay, fluoride does cause harm. We just don't know at what level. And even that, I think, is probably a lie. So I was there in person doing I was doing a number of interviews. I will say that in terms of just my personal work, 2024 has been a great year, friends. And I couldn't do it without you guys. If you allow me just a moment to digress, I was able to go on Redacted. I was able to go again on the High Wire a couple of times, including in studio. I was asked to go on numerous different platforms that are much bigger than mine, and through Twitter and elsewhere, reach more people in 2024. My work continues to grow. And a big part of that was, again, my dedication to stories like the fluoride trial. Because I was so consistent with it, people sort of started to look at me like the fluoride guy. So if they want to learn more about the fluoride lawsuit, they interview me about it. And that allowed me to reach a lot of new people. And I couldn't do that without your work and your support behind the scenes. And of course, with Ryan at The Last American Vagabond, who pays my bills for writing articles. The fluoride lawsuit comes to an end. This is February 20th. So the lawsuit lasted, or the hearing lasted 2 weeks. And I was able to interview, as I'm going to show you guys in a moment, whenever we talk about my top video reports, I was able to interview all the different experts in the lawsuit. And again, that allowed me to reach more people. This one, fact-checking the fact-checkers. Experts say fluoridated water not safe to drink. This is me fact-checking factcheck.org, because as fluoride started to make the news, of course, the corporate fact-checkers got to come out to reassure people everything's okay. This one is an article I wrote in May. Another study finds association between water fluoridation and brain health. Then finally, in August, the long-delayed U.S. government report finally released concludes fluoride lowers IQ in children. Specifically said that there is moderate confidence that fluoride exposure is consistently associated with lower IQ in children. Then after that, about a month later, the judge ruled in the fluoride trial that I went to in February. He finally issued his ruling about 6 months later. And he said that fluoride poses an unreasonable risk of reduced IQ in children. So that was a big bombshell that, again, the media tried to cover up and hide and wiggle their way out of. But I try my best to not only just write these articles for us, those who are in the know, so to speak, but for the audience out there. Like, I want my articles to be shareable for you and your friends and family. I often hear people complain, or they'll send me videos and say, hey, Derrick, I found this research about this topic, but the person kind of sounds crazy, or the format doesn't look good, or it's poorly written, or the website also has a bunch of other crazy stuff on it. This isn't the kind of thing that I can share with my friends and family. Now, granted, some people are just going to be dismissive and they're not going to watch, and they're going to come up with an excuse no matter what, but I totally get it. So I try to make my articles written not just for us, quote unquote, those in the know, us conspiracy theorists, so to speak, but for regular everyday people who can just find my articles, and then from there they can go on and actually learn about it. So that's what I'm trying to do with the fluoride reporting, is to just keep reporting on it, keep consistently staying on it. And I am working on a book about the fluoride trial, about kind of telling that whole story, not just the reporting, the sort of here's the chronological events, but the people behind the lawsuit, like what drives them. It's going to be kind of like a true crime book that's going to be coming out next year, hopefully. But let's go on. So that's my fluoride coverage. That's my top story of 2024. It's top articles of 2024. My next one, Bethany Christian Services. As I said, I started focusing on the adoption industry, and specifically this organization that claims to be Christian, Bethany Christian Services, which surely they do have trolls out there. Once I started reporting on Bethany Christian Services, I did start getting trolls popping up out of nowhere. And it's interesting how you'll notice that happen sometimes when you cover different stories. This was a story brought to my attention by a listener, by a viewer, and he led me down this rabbit hole, which led me to, I wrote a 3-part article series, Bethany Christian Services, a Christian adoption firm with accusations of manipulation, negligence, and trafficking. This was in May. And then a couple of weeks later, I wrote this one, Bethany Christian Services, Mothers Speak Out. And this is where I was able to specifically talk to mothers who have been coerced and, I think lied to by Bethany Christian Services. And they all provided their stories to me and shared them for me for the first time, including court transcripts and records to prove their stories. So this was, again, some firsthand, real, actual journalism, not just talking about news, but actually going and finding and digging into it. This is what I love to do. The third part of the series was called Bethany Christian Services, Meet the Organizations Exposing the Truth About Adoption and Supporting Families in Need. And that's when I interviewed a few different organizations and people who have been involved in trying to help parents who've been abused or had their children essentially trafficked by the adoption industry. And as I'll share in just a little bit, I did a number of different interviews for this series. This is the written version of them, but I also have the audio and video versions of these interviews that we'll talk about in just a bit. So now, again, I'm focused on my own reporting. I know that to many of you out there, you're like, okay, Derrick, cool. Bethany Christian Services. I never heard of that. That doesn't have anything to do with Jeffrey Epstein. Who cares about, who cares about adoption industry? But guys, to me, this is a big story because you can take this example of Bethany Christian Services and you can change the name and go look at any different organization out there. And you can find similar stories. It doesn't matter if it's Bethany Christian Services up in the Midwest. It could be a different name. And in fact, as I learned when I started to research this, there in fact are more organizations involved with this type of what they call open adoptions. And in fact, apparently a young lady who was involved with the show Teen Mom, who's apparently, I guess, still a reality TV star. She recently started speaking about adoption. I don't want to say her name, but I will be interviewing her soon. Got a lot of big things coming up in 2025. And that includes continuing to cover some of the stories that I've reported on, like Bethany Christian Services. I mentioned the Utah situation earlier. That still is ongoing, and I still will be following up with that. So you can stay tuned to that. But yeah, so to me, whether or not you've ever heard of Bethany Christian Services or not, whether you think that's like the biggest story or not, obviously there are a lot of things going on in the world. As I said earlier, it's not the most important thing if we were trying to rank them, but it is an important story because this is about families separated. This is about mothers being, lied to at a young age and taken advantage of, and their babies being taken away from them. It's about false promises. And in some cases, it does, if you read my series here, which by the way, if you go to thelastamericanvagabond.com, you'll see in the navigation bar, something says TLAV team, go to Derrick Broze, and you can see every one of my series that I've done over the years. And you see here, it says fluoride trial. You can click there and see every single thing I've written about fluoride. You can see this, Bethany Christian Services and the adoption industrial complex, identity crisis. I don't know if I did an identity crisis this year. Let me check, because if I did, I should have included that on my list right now, and I didn't. But my point is, you can go to the navigation there and you can find all of my article series, including the Utah ritual abuse, Bill Gates, Web of Dark Money and Influence, The Great Narrative, Justice Delayed, which is about the Mormon Church. And there's a lot going on there. So I've done a lot of reporting that I can't even really keep up with it all the time. Let me see. So my article series, 4-part series, Identity Crisis, the Transgender Debate. I think I did do this earlier this year. So this is happening live. If I did write it earlier this year, then it's getting an honorable mention because I should have put this in here because this is another big important story. No, I wrote this in 2023. I thought, okay. So yeah, it's a little bit older, but if you haven't seen that one, you should check it out. Now let's move on to my third top story of 2024. We already talked about the fluoride trial. We talked about Bethany Christian Services. Now we're going to talk about the United Nations Summit of the Future. Now, some of you maybe never even heard about the Summit of the Future, and it came and went without you even knowing anything happening. So you missed it. No big deal, right? For me, though, it was a big story, not only because I wrote a lot about it, I did videos about it, I did interviews about it, I went to the United Nations, et cetera, but because even though it's just one of many globalist, internationalist UN meetings, this was a big step forward. These people were calling for a giant moment to sign the Pact for the Future, which, by the way, nearly every single government in the world did. Some of them abstained, but in the end, it ended up being approved. As you can see here, I wrote this article in July 2024. The UN will sign the Pact for the Future in 60 days. Here's why it matters. Then in September, the Summit of the Future is only weeks away, yet the public remains ignorant. And then just days before Summit of the Future, the public still has not seen the final draft of the Pact for the Future. And then a couple days later, after it happened, the United Nations signs the Pact for the Future. What comes next? And as I said, I did some firsthand reporting in person with Dan Aston Gregory, which I'm really grateful for and excited about. But the Pact for the Future, the calls for a planetary emergency. Now, I think on one hand, even though I couldn't get as many of you to pay attention and to, raise alarm bells as I was hoping, I was really hoping this would become a big enough movement that there could be some resistance, some protest at the UN, or, something more public. And unfortunately, it didn't manifest. But Dan Aston Gregory did come from the UK. I came from Mexico. We went to the UN. We organized. We got inside. We actually listened to the panels and the talks. And then we were able to report and show you guys, hey, look, this is not only what the UN looks like from the inside, but this is what they're talking about. And I got a lot of globalist propaganda from there. But I do think there is a little bit of a positive story. Yes, they signed the Pact for the Future. But even though we couldn't get as much energy behind it as I would have liked, there was enough pushback that the UN actually took out, we don't know why, but I believe it's because some of the different nations were objecting to it, but they took out some of the worst language of the Summit of the Future, the Pact for the Future, which had to do with declaring a planetary emergency. And I don't think we've seen the end of that, though. I absolutely believe in 2025 and coming years, they're going to revisit this idea of a planetary emergency. It's just that, they didn't have enough support yet. They didn't freak out enough people, things like that. You know how it goes. So they're probably going to continue to push, but nevertheless, I'm grateful for the money, the time, the energy I put into the Summit of the Future. It was kind of a last minute trip. I went to New York City for like 2 or 3 days to the Summit of the Future, came back to Texas, turned around and flew to the UK for the People's Reset. And it was an unexpected trip. It cost me money, time, etc. But I do think it was worthy for even just for my own personal experience to be in the United Nations building and to go experience those kinds of things. I don't believe truth is going to be found just through, coming up with conspiracy theories on the internet. We do have to go out and investigate the real world. We have to connect with other people. We have to talk to people. In fact, believe it or not, I had a kind conversation with a UN employee. I know that sounds kind of crazy. I was just, met this lady at the United Nations and she starts talking to me and, we talked for 5 or 10 minutes at most. But in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, we come from such different worlds. It would just be interesting to actually get deeper into and telling her what I'm really here for and stuff. But nevertheless, we could have an interesting conversation. My point is we got to get out into the real world. I'm going to keep emphasizing that in 2025. It doesn't matter where you live. Get connected, plugged in with people that you need to in your community to get involved in. And, all this did really was just reinforce to me that the people at the UN, there's a lot of good people who are, I think, ignorant, who come from the NGO world and the nonprofit world, and they're just trying to, they like if you've been propagandized and you didn't wake up, most of what we are all taught growing up is propaganda. Here's the inside of the UN during the Summit of the Future on screen. Most of what we've been taught growing up is that the UN is a force for good. And so I think that's probably what any average person thinks. So I don't fault somebody if they come through college and university and get into nonprofits or NGOs and they believe the UN's a force of good. So they go in there and they're working in their little bubble and they're just a little cog in the machine and they have no idea what the bigger picture is or what the people at the top actually want to use the organization for. So all this did was reinforce to me that there's a bunch of good people in there who have no idea what's really going on. And then there's absolutely people in there who are having discussions and who are speaking as if they can speak for the entire world. That's what was crazy to me is like, wow, these people really do think they can speak for us. Like who the hell elected them? Nobody elected them, but they are very confident in speaking like, oh, no, we know what's going on. We know what's best. And it was an interesting experience to say the least. So that was my, the third story, a top story of 2024, the United Nations Summit of the Future. For those just joining, the first one was the fluoride trial resuming. The second one was Bethany Christian Services and the adoption industry complex. My third story here is about the Biden administration's legacy and really just the things that they've done. Like I said earlier, Biden to me is not particularly worse than any other president. He's a horrible president in a lot of ways. He's probably more of a puppet, even more than just when we say, yeah, presidents are puppets because of lobbyists, because of, the predator class in the background and people who are, funding them and stuff like that. But no, this is literally somebody who is being strung along like a puppet. And it's pretty crazy to just witness it happen like right in front of the world. And, so I don't think we should just, ignore those things. So I'm just going to point out a couple of things about Biden's final, his last year in office and his legacy. And like I said, I do have a couple others that I could point to that I might bring up. Let me see where those go. Biden's legacy. Yeah, there's a couple of things we'll get into. Okay, but let's start with these ones here. This first one, Biden administration's legacy of migrant child trafficking. I wrote this one just a couple of weeks ago about what it says: child trafficking, the Office of Refugee Resettlement, how the immigration crisis has been exploited by some people to make some pretty stupid decisions, which allow children to get lost in the mix. And it's clear that there are some obvious fixes. I don't want to say simple or easy, but some obvious ways you could try to rectify this situation. And it's just, it's crazy. And I think it's by design. It's by design so that people like Trump can come in and say, hey, I've got the solution to this. We're going to round everybody up and build a biometric wall and things like that. So this one, Biden administration's legacy of migrant child trafficking. Another one that just published a couple of days ago, Biden administration and Mr. Monsanto continue to bully Mexico into accepting GMO corn. I just wrote about this. And essentially, there's this dude you might have heard of. His name's Mr. Monsanto. His name's Tom Vilsack. He is the head of the USDA, Department of Agriculture. And he served during the Obama administration, and then he came back. They brought him back during the Biden administration. He used to work in the dairy industry. He's got, connections to biotech industry and lobbying and all kinds of fun stuff. And his nickname literally is Mr. Monsanto because during the Obama administration, he approved more GMOs than any other USDA chief or head in history. So this is the kind of person that Biden has been working with to try to force Mexico to accept U.S. GMO corn. Currently, Mexico is one of the largest importers of GMO yellow corn from the United States, and it all goes to, Tom Balsack is exactly right. It all goes to animal feed, and it's not for human consumption because if you don't know, Mexico and a lot of Latin America are very rich in corn. There's a huge cultural heritage around corn, maize, and the spiritually, as well as just the history of the agriculture, the milpas, chinampas, and it's a big part of Mexican culture. And so Mexico doesn't want these corn varieties to be contaminated with that shitty old American GMO corn. So they start talking about a policy to ban it. And the U.S. starts freaking out and is basically saying under the USMCA, which is Donald Trump's agreement, basically his redoing of NAFTA, under the USMCA agreement, they are forcing Mexico to trying to force them to accept the GMO corn. Once Mexico said we're going to start banning it for human consumption, we're going to ban the import of it, the US started freaking out, so did Canada. And long story short, which I highly encourage you to read this article, guys, because I put a good amount of time into it, but there's some interesting details that just show you how the US government views indigenous people, and basically told Mexico, like, you're too dumb, you don't know what's what. Your arguments about why GMOs are bad are not scientifically sound, and they don't line up with our risk assessments. And your arguments about indigenous people aren't real legal arguments. So shut up and eat our GMO corn. Pretty much what it comes down to. But you can find that one at TLAV. It was my most recent article. And that was all under the Biden administration, obviously. So this is what we're talking about, Biden's legacy here. And then this one I wrote in July 2024, the Biden DOJ targets a Texas doctor who blew the whistle on transgender treatment for children. And this came right after Pride Month. And it was saying how this doctor, Texas Children's Hospital doctor, Ethan Heim, he was indicted by the Department of Justice and arraigned in Houston. This is local news where I'm originally from in Houston. And actually, I need to check up and see how this is, how things are progressing. But he's a 34-year-old surgeon who was reportedly working at Texas Children's Hospital, and he was accused of improperly accessing hospital records. And it's a long story, but basically he found out that there were surgeries going on and treatments happening for, kids getting so-called gender affirming services for minors, even after Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said that it was a form of child abuse and that they were supposed to stop doing it. He found out they were still secretly doing it behind the scenes. And when he leaked that information to a journalist, even though he redacted it, now they're trying to indict him. And not just like a local, the hospital suing, but the Biden DOJ coming out of nowhere and saying, hey, random Houston doctor, Texas doctor who's trying to reveal the truth, we're indicting you. Pretty interesting. And obviously under Biden, we've seen a lot of the acceleration of the push for gender ideology. That is not to say, and I just feel like the need to add this caveat every time, because there are a lot of people out there who are just fucking hateful and ignorant and idiots. That is not to say that I think that trans people don't exist and that transgender individuals haven't been around for hundreds of years, because they have. But that's totally different what we've seen historically in a tiny, tiny, small percentage of people to what we're seeing now with it being pushed all over the place in certain cities and certain states and through certain education systems. There's clearly a social contagion going on. I talked a couple minutes ago about my 2023 series, Gender Identity or Identity Crisis. I encourage you to go back to thelastamericanvagabond.com and read that if you're not familiar with that topic. You can talk about, I was so weary of talking about it for years because I was like, man, I don't want to get into this right-wing culture war, whatever, arguing with people about gender, this and this and that. But it is an important issue. And the main reason I did dive into that, and the reason I'm even talking about it now, and that I did that article I just shared, and I wrote the Identity Crisis series last year, was because I had a friend, a friend that I care about, reach out to me and express that that was something that their child was going through, and that they were afraid to say the wrong thing for fear of pushing their child further away. And, they could see how social media was absolutely influencing, like TikTok and Instagram, influencing their child to go further and further into this direction. And they were just, they kind of came to me in tears and said, Derrick, have you ever looked further into this? And I was already sort of in my mind thinking like, I need to, excuse me, I'm pulling some articles up. I need to address this topic at some point. And then that was sort of the final straw where I was like, you know what? I'm going to talk about this. It needs to be talked about. And that led to my series, Identity Crisis. So, all right, let's go to my top story, top article of 2025, number 5. And this is the final article. After this, we're going to focus on my top reports. We're going to talk about my top interviews, and we're going to talk about some talks. This is just a review of 2024, guys. So if you came here looking for the news about whatever trending garbage Trump's up to, we're not doing that tonight. We're talking about a reflection of 2024 and hopefully refreshing your mind and memory on some of the work I've done. And I do want to say this, that, for example, if you've been watching for a long time, I'm live right now across 2 YouTube channels, 3 Facebook channels, a Twitter account, Odyssey. This will go up on BitChute, on Rockfin, on Twitter, Substack, Spotify, elsewhere. If you've been watching or listening for a long time and you've never given to my work, I highly encourage you guys in 2025, if you can, invest in my journalism so I can continue to do this. You can go to theconsciousresistance.com/invest, because 90% of the work I do, including my Pyramid of Power series, my books, the video reports I do, the interviews, the podcast, I'm not paid for. I do have so many awesome people on Buy Me a Coffee and Substack, and I'm grateful for you guys, and I get paid for my articles, but it really isn't possible without your support. So if you got a little bit of extra holiday cash, I invite you to go to theconsciousresistance.com/invest and support real investigative journalism, not the mainstream alternative media crap. My final top 5 story of 2024 is the Great Inversion. This is what I've been calling the fake awakening, the co-opting of the freedom movement by people like Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Tucker Carlson, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Peter Thiel. You guys know them, Vivek Ramaswamy. And I wrote this article, this kind of piece in July 2024, exploring what I call the Great Inversion. And there's a video version of this as well. If you just go search the Great Inversion on our website, you'll find this. And this was an idea that was really percolating in my head for a couple of months. As I was seeing, of course, the closer we got to the election, the more and more the propaganda ramped up, as it typically is. And I was just getting sick of seeing people. It was a reminder of 2016 and really of 2020. It was like all these people who I thought were more intelligent, I guess I gave them too much credit, just start falling for the garbage, and one by one, just going the way of, statism and lies. And I don't know, it was just crazy watching it happen. And so I was finally like, I need to do this article, The Great Inversion. And so The Great Inversion, as it says right here, I'll just quote from it real briefly. It says, I define the Great Inversion as a false awakening whereby the steadily waking masses of freedom lovers are duped once more into falling for fake heroes and messiahs and stealthily manipulated into supporting their own enslavement. I believe the rise of actors like Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Tucker Carlson, and other figures is part of a false awakening taking place where many freedom lovers around the world are looking to these figures as the last line of defense against the predator class and the technocratic state. And it goes on further from that. I encourage you to read more, learn more about this. I was grateful that people like David Icke and others shared this article. It was read pretty widely across the internet at the time, and I'm grateful for everybody who shared it. So these stories here in this kind of series, what we're talking about, the Great Inversion, come from The Last American Vagabond, and these are examples of the Great Inversion. So I wrote this article back in August. What role will Google's Eric Schmidt play in election 2024? Eric Schmidt is, of course, former CEO of Google and one of the steering committee members of the Bilderberg Group. He was supporting the Harris side of the equation. Then I wrote America's Frontier Fund, the venture capital firm with ties to Peter Thiel and Eric Schmidt. Eric Schmidt and Peter Thiel, of course, are both steering committee members of the Bilderberg Group. Peter Thiel was supporting the Trump side of the equation. Then I wrote this article in October, right before the election 2024, Zionist technocrats versus Zionist technocrats. And I show both sides. Here's Kamala Harris and the technocrats, Eric Schmidt, Bill Gates, George Soros, Alex Karp, Donald Trump and the technocrats, Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel's a lot, Elon Musk, Miriam Adelson, and other Silicon Valley people, Timothy Mellon, Nicole Shanahan, etc. Then I more recently, post-election, wrote this article about Elon. You can't hide. Elon Musk and SpaceX are helping U.S. intelligence build the world's largest spy satellite network. And then also recently, meet the spyware companies preparing to unleash their technology during Trump's second term, just showing the connections there to Trump and his incoming administration and the big tech kind of spyware companies. And then I wrote this one actually before the election, but it's another example. The Republican Party platform under Donald Trump is pro-Israel and anti-free speech. And I could go on. I mean, I did spend quite a bit of my time in the second half of the year working hard to expose this narrative. And so a lot of people got sick of it. I don't think I've ever taken as much flack as I have the last 6 months. For those of you who stuck it out and are still with me and are capable of critical thinking, even if you disagree with me, I think I'm already being proven right by Trump's picks and choices, but time will tell even further. But many people just said, you know what, I'm stopped listening to you, Derrick. I can't pay attention anymore. You got TDS, your Trump derangement syndrome. That's just another way to deflect so people don't actually have to think about the issues at hand. But nevertheless, that's what a lot of people told me. They said, Derrick, like you've gone off the rails. I used to think you were credible. I can't. It's like people. I don't know if you guys just like to fuck with my head, so you kind of like want to hurt my ego or something. It's like, oh, I'm going to tell him I used to be a big fan of yours, Derrick, but you really lost your way. And the truth is, a lot of people did lose their way during Trump, but not because they were against Trump, but because they were kissing Trump and Musk's ass, and that's still happening. Go over and look on Luke Rudkowski and We Are Change and Tim Pool and Joe Rogan and all the other pro-Trump mainstream alternative media that just lost their freaking minds. That's not what happened with me. But I do appreciate people who stuck it out. And the reason I put so much energy into it, especially if you're like, Derrick, I get it. I've already heard it. Peter Thiel, Bilderberg Group, we got it. But clearly you can see how many people don't got it. I mean, how many people out there, you probably know people who claim to be freedom lovers or are awake or whatever, that are brain dead when it comes to Trump. And they're kissing his ass. They're kissing the ring. They're ready for North American Union now because Trump wants to reclaim, he wants to take Canada and reclaim Mexico. Well, that sounds a lot like the New World Order North American Union plan they had a few years ago. The point is these people are and will continue to make excuses for Trump. And I felt it was important as a journalist, but also as an activist and just as somebody who recognizes that we are in an ideological battle. I don't like Alex Jones, but Alex Jones is correct that this is an information war. The concern is just whose side of the information war is he on? But it is an information war. It is an ideological war. And for me, being quiet and just saying, oh yeah, screw it. A bunch of people are asleep and they like Trump. I'm just going to exist in my own bubble and not comment on it. That's not enough. Like I want to be actively participating in what's going on in the world. I want to actually show people that there is an alternative message. I don't want to just give in because, I don't know you guys, but when I first woke up to this movement of people who give a crap about the world, it was the best thing that ever happened to me because all of a sudden I went from being completely asleep and depressed and on drugs and alcohol and partying and just having no purpose to waking up and realizing that there is a bigger picture and that we can work to expose corruption and to build a better world. And so I was kind of like freaked out and excited, but I was also pumped. I was like, oh my God, I'm awake. And now I'm finding other awake people, and we're going out, we're passing out flyers, we're protesting, we're doing things. But that's because I always was very action oriented, right? So for me, I see the effort to reach people as like a critical must. It's not just, I'm just not some black pilled guy like maybe some of you guys out there who just tunes into the podcast and then goes to work and then drinks a beer on the weekend and doesn't do anything about it. I want to actively change and impact and affect the world. And I am, and I have, and I see it, and I see other people. And together we synergize, we collaborate, we motivate, we activate each other. Like that's what I care about. So for me, the last 6 months have been like, all right, the crazy status intelligence agencies that are trying to manipulate people's hearts and minds, they're winning. They're pulling more people back into the left-right paradigm. People were waking up during COVID, and all of a sudden now it's like, wait, hold on, I got to vote again. Left-right paradigm, Trump or Harris, Trump or Biden or whoever else. And meanwhile, everybody forgets that a year ago, nobody wanted Trump. Nobody wanted Biden, except for the hardcore people, of course. They always love Trump regardless. But the vast majority of Americans did not want a Trump or Biden reelection. They did not want Trump or Harris election. More people, as I said recently, more people chose not to vote than voted for either Trump or Harris. And I think that's a good sign. So for me, the reason I was going so hard on this fifth story of the great inversion is because I'm just like, I can't let the precious freedom movement, truth movement that has given my life purpose and hope and meaning just get sucked out of, the pursuit of truth and pulled into these freaking dead ends and rabbit holes of following politicians and literally supporting somebody like Elon Musk, who is a military industrial complex contractor and who is talking about putting chips in your brain and merging with AI and transhumanism. Like, I'm just like, my God, how can people not see this? But I try to have faith that if I just do what I know I'm here to do and just keep plugging away, that doesn't mean I can't be wrong. I'm not claiming I have all the answers, but I do believe I'm correct on this one, and just keep plugging away and keep trying to reach who I can and ignore the haters and try to talk to those who are willing to listen, that it's worth it in the end. And maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just some crazy guy in my room ranting at a camera and, trying to make sense of a fucked up world. But I'm doing my best to try to wake people up. So I did go extra hard on the great inversion this year. And, I really do think that it's a big story. So those are my top 5 important stories of 2024. The fluoride trial resumed in February. Bethany Christian Services and the adoption industry complex. The United Nations Summit of the Future. The truth about Biden's legacy, and then the great inversion, the false awakening taking place. Guys, we're going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to come back and cover my top interviews of 2024. We got a lot of interesting interviews, and this isn't just about conspiracies. I do got some fluoride stuff. I got some of the other things I mentioned, but I've also got interviews with conscious musicians. We've got interviews that are inspiring and motivating. That's the stuff I want to focus on even more for 2025, guys, because the world is fucked up. The world is crazy, but we have so much power within your hands. And there are people out there in the alternative media that they want to feed you a line that is either black-pilled, it's hopeless, or it's have hope in the politicians, and just keep sending in your checks and we'll all, they'll solve everything for us. Like, I freaking see Tim Pool's got a Cybertruck now. I'm sure there's no conflict of interest of why he's shilling for Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Nevertheless, we have to make our own 2025, guys, and I really do hope to focus on more positive stories. But stay tuned. We'll be right back. This is Derrick Broze and the Conscious Resistance Network. I'm going to play a couple of clips first, and we'll get right back.
Are you using your phone, or is it using you? Rise above mass surveillance and discover a phone that protects your privacy and communications.
Above Phone does everything your old phone does, without tracking you, while giving you complete control over your phone and apps. We are better than big tech. It works with any cell service. No forced logins, no advertising or tracking. Download apps privately. Control your phone and its apps with secure hardware. Introducing Above Suite. Protects your internet traffic. Private email on any device. Video call with friends privately. Encrypted chat, calls, and internet phone. Protect your searches and get results. Don't worry if you're new. Every phone includes a free 45-minute live call. You also get free email and chat support. free guides, and video courses. We can take back our technology. We're here to help with tools and education. You have the power.
Rise above with Above Phone.
AbovePhone.com.
You are here speaking to the crypto audience. Last week, the libertarians. You're reaching out to people who are not vibing with the two-party system, especially younger people. I'm 39, so folks like myself, 40 and under, let's say, who are really concerned about the two-party system. And you offer a different message, but one area where you align with the two other guys is on the support for Zionism and Israel. Do you have anything to say to those supporters who might be who want to support you but are concerned about that?
They're fighting a defense.
Do you still think the Palestinians are the most pampered people in the world?
I think that Palestinians have received more money than any other group in the world from the international aid agencies. Approximately $8,600 per person. After World War II, we rebuilt Europe and the expenditure was about $626 per person. So Palestinians receive more than 10 times that. I'm very pro-Palestinian. I want them to receive that money. But the question is, why is Palestine now one of the richest countries in the Mideast? The reason for that is because the leadership has stolen that money. The top, Ismail Haniyeh, who runs Hamas, is on a net worth of $4 billion. The other leaders of Hamas are billionaires or 100 millionaires. And they've used that money to make war, to build an underground city, 300 miles of tunnels. They're not using it to benefit the Palestinian people. Palestinian people ought to be pampered, but they weren't. They're starved, but not by Israel, by their own leaders.
Any comment on the Sunday bombing?
No, thank you.
The bombing on Sunday, Bobby?
That's it.
What's interesting is over $300,000 of that money was statewide outside of my congressional district. In fact, those ads are still running. My race ended Tuesday, and AIPAC is still running ads against me statewide, which is political malpractice, political campaign malpractice, because it's going to elevate my name ID, and 2 years from now, nobody's going to remember what the ads were about. What's more is a super PAC associated with Senator Rand Paul has matched AIPAC penny for penny statewide on their ads. So Protect Freedom PAC is running positive ads for me statewide. The net result is, outside of my congressional district, even though any race statewide would be at least 2 years from now, there's been $650,000 of spending elevating my name ID statewide. So thank you, AIPAC.
You co-sponsored the Federal Reserve Board Abolition Act. Can you talk about the importance of bringing that issue back, which most people, especially here at the Libertarian Convention, learned about through Ron Paul?
Yeah, I joke that it's like the McRib. It's coming back, whether you like it or not. And the last time it was introduced was by Paul Brown. There were only two co-sponsors, myself and Ted Yoho. And I'm the only remaining member of Congress who sponsored it when Ron Paul was in the House of Representatives. What's fascinating to me is that 10 years ago, we got three co-sponsors on this bill. Spent 2 years getting co-sponsors and got three. This time, right, coincident with the introduction of the bill, I have 24 co-sponsors. So what's happened since Ron Paul introduced the bill, last introduced the bill 10 years ago, and now? Well, you've seen an erosion of trust in institutions. We all know FBI, CDC, FDA, these institutions, DOJ, institutions which used to have a level of trust, probably misplaced trust, but some level of trust among Americans has been eroded from the things that we've learned. And so also the things that Ron Paul were predicting have come true. We've got massive inflation. Just in 4 years, we've seen 25% of the dollar evaporate. That's all enabled by the Federal Reserve. Yes, Congress is to blame as well, but we couldn't get away with that. We couldn't have monetized our debt during COVID without the Federal Reserve. And so that's why the time has come to reintroduce that, and I think that's why we see 10 times as much support in Congress for the bill to abolish the Federal Reserve.
Just a quick follow-up on that related issue, the concern about central bank digital currencies. Obviously, you're raising awareness on this concern, and there are, the public worried about programmable money and how they might be just used against them in certain ways for their beliefs. What are your thoughts on how the people, obviously you're fighting from within the system, what the people on the street level who are worried about this can do to raise awareness or to push back?
There will be attempts to legalize central bank digital currency in Congress, and some of these are going to be sneak attacks. We've got to remain vigilant to make sure they don't slip these into other bills. The Fed can't yet do a full-blown central bank digital currency without some kind of authorization from Congress. Even they acknowledge that, but they're doing some test runs for it, and you're seeing some pushback at state levels against these test runs. But given what I've observed from government, they're probably more likely to use the big banks that they've enriched as sort of the central bank digital currency enablers and enactors. And so we've got to be vigilant there as well.
All right, thank you. Welcome back to the Conscious Resistance Live. My name is Derrick Broze. So that was a quick break we took. You saw 2 clips from there, and those are part of my, my top interviews of 2024. One of them was a confrontation of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Obviously, I think his answers are crap. And in that second one, there was Kentucky Representative Thomas Massey discussing APAC and discussing the Federal Reserve and CBDCs there. All of those can be found at theconsciousresistance.com. And then before that, we played an ad from the Above phone. If you go to theconsciousresistance.com, you'll see an ad that you can click through. If you do need to get a new phone and you want to do a privacy-based phone, de-Googled, I encourage you to get the Above phone. And I encourage you to go to theconsciousresistance.com and click on my link to get it, because that supports my work as well. Now let's go on. We're going to continue. We're covering my top stories of 2024. We just did my top 5 articles of 2024, and they were all it was a bunch more than 5, but there were 5 main themes. Now we're going to be doing a similar thing, but for my articles. I do a lot of different types of content, so when I was going through everything, I was like, you know what, I don't think it's enough to just say top stories. I think I need to go in a little deeper. So here's my top interviews of 2024. At the fluoride trial, Dr. Howard Hu, again, I'm not going to go into each of these. There's a lot to cover here, but Dr. Howard Hu, one of the scientists testifying about the dangers of fluoride, involved in several studies on fluoride and IQ. I also interviewed Dr. Bruce Lanphier, speaks out against corrupted fluoride science. He's also was kind of like a whistleblower in Canada about pesticides as well, and I talked to him about that. And as I said, he testified in the fluoride lawsuit. Dr. Philippe Grandjean from Denmark, he also is just amazing history, done great work on mercury, toxicity, things of that sort, was another one of the key witnesses. I got to interview him there. Then I got to interview Michael Connett, who's the lead attorney involved in the lawsuit as well. This was actually during the fluoride lawsuit at the hearing. He was kind of giving us an update there. So if you want to go back and learn more about that. And I also interviewed one of the mothers who was a plaintiff on the lawsuit. Meet one of the moms suing the EPA over water fluoridation, fluoride lawsuit. Brenda Stoudemire. What's up, Brenda? Hope you're doing well. And her sons, Co and Hayden, are plaintiffs, or are ongoing plaintiffs in this lawsuit. And then after the judge ruled, we interviewed Michael Connett again, explaining the historic ruling in the fluoride lawsuit, what comes next, and how you can help. So that was, this is an important topic. I already kind of said this with all the articles, but as you can see, I was extensively reporting on this for quite some time. The other second big, some of my other interviews relate to the adoption story that we were just talking about a few moments ago, Bethany Christian Services. This is an interview I did with author Catherine Joyce called The Child Catchers in the Adoption Industry Complex. Catherine's book is called The Child Catchers, Rescue, Trafficking, and the New Gospel of Adoption. This is a really interesting interview, especially, again, like I said, if this is new information to you as far as how the adoption industry works. I noticed there was a lot of pushback, in fact, maybe because some of the organizations involved are religious or Christian, and so people get extra sensitive about it. But I think if you look into it with an open mind, then it's clear that there's some messed up stuff happening. As I said, I also got to interview some of the women who are involved in supporting the moms who've been involved in the adoption industry. I talked to Renee Gellin, who's a co-founder of Saving Our Sisters, which supports parents and the families who are considering adoption by making sure they get accurate information. I also interviewed Janine Vance, who's an author, activist, an adoptee advocate, and she's a co-founder with her sister of the Adoption, Truth, and Transparency Worldwide Information Network. She was a Korean adoptee, and that's like a whole another part of the story of like the Korean adoption industry. And so we did an interview with them called Exposing the Truth and Supporting Those in Need. You can find those at the website as well. And as I shared earlier, I know I'm covering a lot of information, but all of this will be here. I'll just go ahead and click. If you go to theconsciousresistance.com right now, the front post is Conscious Resistance Live, number 147, my most important articles, interviews, and video reports. Tonight, I will be putting all of these articles I'm covering in the show notes so you can see them there and get caught up. And, if you're looking for something to read, I know there's a million things to distract you on the internet, but if you really want a deep review of what happened in 2024, I encourage you to do so. Now, some of my other important interviews related to the election, this is part of the great inversion, as I said. How many of you out there, by a show of hands, saw my discussion, debate, whatever you want to call it, with Ian Carroll? Ian Carroll goes by Cancel This Clothing, recently cut his hair. People said we used to look alike. I don't see it. But the point is, he's one of these people who's like, follow the money. He's all over TikTok. He's blowing up. And then he starts going RFK. Then he goes full on Trump. And we had this discussion, which I think was like a 2-hour discussion in the end. And I think it was pretty enlightening for a lot of people. It was 1 hour and 54 minutes. So if you haven't seen it, I do encourage you to go listen or watch this. Is Donald Trump the lesser of two evils? I honestly think it's one of my finer pieces of work, because I think if somebody can listen to this conversation with an objective mind, they can see who's making excuses and who's coming with the facts. And I feel pretty strong on my side. And after that as well, I talked to Alec Zeck of the Way Forward podcast, Don't Vote. So what's your solution? And that was a really great interview. Again, sort of in that theme of what I was sharing about a few moments ago, of really just trying to hammer home on the great inversion and trying to wake people up, because I don't know about you guys, but it saddens me to see so many people in the so-called truth freedom movement just, falling for these psyops and falling for this garbage. It really does rub me the wrong way. It really does upset me to the point that that's why I dedicate my time and energy to this. Okay, so let's go into a couple more interviews. These next couple interviews are of conscious musicians. Part of my goal with the Conscious Resistance has always been to highlight music as well. I'm a musician. I love music. I listen to punk, metal, conscious hip hop, reggae. I listen to all kinds of stuff. I love good music. I love music with a good message. And since the beginning of the Conscious Resistance, I've always been highlighting conscious artists. And this year was no different. So we did 3 interviews of conscious musicians this year. One of them was January 11th to start the year off. Punk's Not Dead, Total Chaos, still fighting the system after 30 years. And I talked to my friend Rob Chaos, who's the lead singer and the founding member of the punk band Total Chaos, who's been kicking ass for decades now. And they had a new album out called Mind Warfare. I encourage you guys to go check them out. Really cool. Rob is one of the only punks, in the sort of old school movement who is still vocal about speaking out against government, and who didn't go out there and promote the shots to his audience or require his audience to get jabs to come to see them play and stuff like that. A very cool guy, a very insightful conversation. Even if you don't know their band, I think you would enjoy it. And then I interviewed Dub FX, who's another, hero of mine who I'm going to get to perform with again in next month at the People's Reset. He's coming to Mexico. Dub FX, he makes dub, electronic, reggae, like a mix of things. And he's just an awesome performer. He does like live looping and beatbox. And his message is so on point. And I did this interview in August called Empowering and Waking Up the People with Dub FX. I encourage you to go check that out. And then I also interviewed my friend and an artist that I've got to work with now, Presence. This interview is called Spreading Liberty and Natural Law Through Music. Presence is a really cool guy, smart dude, super talented, insanely talented. And I got to, he came and performed at the People's Reset in the UK. He's going to be performing at the People's Reset in Mexico. Him and I did a song recently you guys may have heard called Taxation is Theft, and that was really cool. So I'm always going to just be focusing on trying to highlight conscious musicians where I can. I think it's important. A couple other interviews. I was on Redacted. I shared that earlier. I went on Redacted. I definitely don't fully align with what Clayton and Natalie believe as far as Trump. They seem to be very pro-Trump, but I'm grateful that they've given me an audience to talk about my work, including the fluoride trial, the Summit of the Future. And then they brought me on to talk about the Pyramid of Power and false flags and the Oklahoma City bombing. So I was grateful for that. And on my podcast, The Activation, I did episode number 30 a couple months ago with Patrick Holford, Optimizing Your Nutrition to Heal Your Body. This is an extremely awesome conversation. I think this is one of my best interviews of this year that has probably been overlooked, because for the most part, guys, you don't want solutions. You just want to hear about all the fucked up things. So if I come at you with solutions, I get way less people interested in the content, but if it's all about Jeffrey Epstein and trafficking and the worst things you can imagine, everybody wants to click as soon as they can. And it's sad as fuck. But this is, if you want something positive to listen to, and you want some actual helpful health information, particularly about your brain, because Patrick Holford is a brilliant guy, and he's from the Food for the Brain Foundation and the Institute for Optimum Nutrition. He's written this new book called Upgrade Your Brain. I just encourage you guys to go check out this conversation. It was really cool to get to know him, and then to meet him in person in the UK and listen to him speak. So check that out. That's The Activation. And by the way, The Activation is one of my podcasts besides the Conscious Resistance Live. I inconsistently release episodes for The Activation, which is a solutions-focused podcast. It's the exact opposite of this. It's not about the news. It's just empowering, insightful, and hopefully activating conversations. You can find that at theconsciousresistance.com. If you go search there, you'll find it more. And thank you. I just saw there was a comment somebody made about giving a donation. Truth Eli, add a donate button to the top banner. I think we have it in there. It's probably in the about, but you're right. It could be a little bit more in your face. And I appreciate you going to the effort to find it. People want to check it out. If you want to support me, theconsciousresistance.com/invest. And my crypto addresses are there. I do appreciate you, brother. Thank you for that, or sister. And I do appreciate crypto support, because it's getting harder and harder to move money around. That's a whole nother story. But yeah, so that podcast with Patrick Holford was a really good one. I encourage you guys to go check that out. And probably one of my biggest interviews of this year was to go meet and sit with David Icke for a couple of hours in the UK. We did this interview. This was in early October. So it's been a couple months now. And if you guys follow my channels, you probably saw that I shared a clip the other day where David Icke was mentioning some of my articles and my work. It's been great to get to know him a little bit. I noticed that he's been sharing my content this year. I got connected with his sons, and I did get to go meet him in person. We did this interview, and he also has been interviewed for the final 2 episodes of The Pyramid of Power, which you can find out at thepyramidofpower.net. He is going to be in chapter 16 on religion and secret societies, which will come out next month in January. And he'll be in the final episode answering the question, who's on top of the pyramid? That's going to be out in March or April. And that has like 15 different researchers and people in it, including David Icke. But this was a cool interview because it was pretty wide ranging. David was gracious with his time and let me sit down with him for, I think, an hour and a half. Yeah, an hour and 28 minutes to talk about Elon Musk and Russell Brand and Alex Jones and the Zionist lobby and Jesse Ventura, what motivates him, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it was a really fun interview. I had a good time with it. And you can find that one at theconsciousresistance.com as well. That was an interesting interview. And let me just pause here for a moment just to get a show of hands. I'll read the comments here. What are your thoughts, generally speaking, on David Icke? It doesn't affect me one way or the other. So if you think David Icke's a total shill, that's fine as well. I get so many people send me all kinds of things, everything from people claiming that David Icke was involved in satanic ritual abuse. And of course, there's no evidence of that, but there's people with stories, and it's like, how serious do you take those stories? You know, I like to listen to people when they make claims, but it's also hard when people make big claims and there's not a lot of evidence to show for it. There's people, saying, oh, he's a Freemason. They show some pictures of him sitting in a chair, which I heard him explain before. And, he has a story for that, whether you believe it or not. Somebody sent me a link the other day about, what was it? Like Freemasonry lineage, or his family lineage, his family name, allegedly going back hundreds of years and this kind of thing. And I don't know, guys. I try to just judge people for what I can see and what I can prove. And a lot of times it's not easy. I get that. I get that there's a lot of things we can't prove, we can't know, and that everybody's freaking paranoid. People call me a Freemason all the time. They call me all kinds of things. People are going to believe what they want. And at the end of the day, you stop caring after a while. So when I met David and I talked to him and I said, man, I was actually telling him, I spend too much time reading the comments, man. I get sucked into these stupid debates and this and that. And he was like, oh man, he was just kind of giving me advice. He's like, I send it out to the world and I don't look back. I don't look at anything. And I was like, I'm trying to get better at that, especially because, he's followed by a lot more people than me. But the point is, at some point you just stop caring. So it's funny to me that people have all these conspiracies and these theories about different people. And yeah, some of them surely are true. There are a lot of corrupt people out there that we cover on this program and we talk about often. And at the same time, there's a lot of people, good people just doing work. And the people who don't do shit but sit on the internet just come up with theories and they try to downplay your work. And that happens to me. It's frustrating when somebody just comes along and is like, oh, this guy's a shill. And they don't even have a good reason. It's just like, oh, because he does this, or because he hung out with this one person, or his website has a symbol I don't like, or blah, blah, whatever. It's stupid. And obviously I call out people. I called out Tim Pool, Luke Rakowski, Elon Musk, people like that. But in my belief, I'm calling people out for things I can actually prove, legitimate things that they have talked about, said, or done, not just speculation, guesswork, just making shit up. And unfortunately, that's what I think a lot of people do in the conspiracy community. They're reaching for straws. And so when I talk about people, that's not what I'm trying to do. I want to try to bring you guys information that I can actually prove. So with all that said, what do you think about David Icke? Do you guys trust him? Do you think he's one of them? I'm not a diehard follower of David. I don't really watch one of his videos. I wouldn't have even known he was talking about me recently until a friend of mine said something to me. But he did influence my work early on. I mean, he was, anybody who goes down these rabbit holes, I think you eventually find David Icke and you hear about his work, whatever you think about it. So I did find his work early on. And in fact, as I told David, I think I even mentioned in the interview that in 2013, or 2012, when I first launched the Conscious Resistance, I was listening to a bunch of David Icke. And I was having one of those nights where you just stay up all night watching YouTube videos back when YouTube had truth on it. And I couldn't sleep. I was just like, oh my God, watching videos. And I think I was watching one of his like 9-hour presentations on Saturn or something. And I don't know if it was right that moment, but at some point I heard the words, the conscious resistance, or it was whispered to me. It was given to me, however you want to think about it. And so I'm not saying David Icke inspired the conscious resistance, but I do think his overall message of empowerment is strong. A lot of people are like, oh, he's just this and that. But I don't think they actually read his work. I don't think they actually listen to what he says. Like a lot of things, people will be critical of me, but they've never actually read the Conscious Resistance trilogy. They've never read How to Opt Out of the Democratic State, but they think what I know I'm about. And so I can only imagine David Icke, having been around for dozens of more years than myself, and written more books than I have. And he's got big, thick books that people will just ignore, and they just make up all kinds of crazy shit. So it's frustrating. Anyways, let's look at some comments here. What we got? First off, Concan. I've been binge watching The Pyramid of Power the last few days. It's so much better than the crap on TV. A ton of work went into it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Truly, 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 truly do appreciate that. You have no idea how much that means. We are very grateful because a lot of work does go into that, and we're working hard on it. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for checking it out. Let's see what else we got. David Icke said he saw the black cube during a DMT experience, and that's where he's going when he leaves this mortal coil. The reptilian thing was a bit too far, but archetypically it is accurate, even if materially incomplete or off-putting, etc. One's actions reveals oneself. Words are just words. So somebody said, oh, here, let me tell you, uncertain about Jeff Berwick. Berwick hangs with him, so that's okay. Berwick is a total fucking shill. Let me just derail my own show for a moment here. Stop trusting Jeff Berwick. Stop trusting Jeff Berwick. What the fuck is wrong with you people? This guy has nothing to offer. He just rants. He goes on walks with his dog. He's not a researcher. He's not an author. He's not a deep intellectual. He's not an investigator. He's not a journalist. He is just a rich guy who got rich off Bitcoin and owns Anarchapulco. But every time he has the event, he's either drunk, he tries to hit on people's girlfriends, he tried to fight me twice like we were in high school, he's scammed people. Go to my website, search Anarchapulco. You can find me talking about it. This is coming from a speaker who spoke at Anarchapulco 3 times in 2017, 2018, 2019. Jeff Berwick is not to be trusted, and way too many of you fucking listen to that guy. He is not a good dude. God, man, I'm so sick of hearing people mention Jeff Berwick because it's just frustrating how many people fall for it. And really, I don't even get the appeal. There's nothing to him. He's just sitting there ranting and walking. Like it's just nothing. There's nothing like profound about it. But anyways, let's get back into it. We're going to continue with my top video reports of 2024. We've now covered my top articles of 2024. We've covered my top interviews of 2024, and there was some more. I skipped over some, but again, they'll all be listed at the website. Let's cover my top video reports of 2024, and then we'll end with my talks, and then we're done. I appreciate you guys. Again, this has been a fun year for me. This has been a crazy, busy year. Besides all those stuff I'm sharing with you guys, I've been working on the land. We're about to completely pay off our property. We're going to start building our house in 2025. I've been working on the People's Reset. We held the People's Reset in January, then again in the UK in September, and then now we're about to have it again in January. So it's been a busy year for me, even outside of all the journalism and everything. But let's get back into it. So my first top video report of 2024, the Pyramid of Power. I'm sad to say that we only released 2 episodes of the Pyramid of Power this year. I did get a new editor this year, so there was a little bit of a transitionary period, but it was worth the wait. I'm working with Stefano, who is just an amazing editor, and we just released this episode back in May 2024, The Pyramid of Power, Chapter 14, The False Flag Deception, which features G. Edward Griffin. And then we just released a couple months ago in September, Chapter 15, The Pedo Class, which is even deeper dive. I encourage you guys to check this out again. You can find them at theconsciousresistance.com. You can also just go directly to thepyramidofpower.net. And as I mentioned earlier, we are currently working on, it's being edited. I just watched the first content draft of Chapter 16, Religion and Secret Societies, and my editor, Steph, is super excited. He said that he thinks this is going to be the best one yet. So I'm excited because I had a fun, it's always a challenge for me when I go down these like huge rabbit holes. If you guys watched my show last week when we talked about the Jesuits, I showed you a little bit of my document as I'm organizing Chapter 17. Now, it's one thing, guys, to sort of watch YouTube videos or read a couple books and think you have an understanding of the world, but then try to imagine like, okay, I'm going to put this together in a presentation and actually hope people watch it. That takes a lot more work because you can't put every single fact that exists. Otherwise, it's going to be a 10-hour documentary. And so you have to really pick and choose and what's most important and how can I, tie this to this point and this person. And it's a fun puzzle exercise for me. I do love it, but it's a labor of love. Very, very, very much time consuming and interesting, but I do appreciate everybody who watches it. So thank you for that. You can go to thepyramidofpower.net. Stay tuned for Chapter 16 and Chapter 17 in 2025. These are just a couple of random reports that I've got here. These next 2 are about the fact that one of the positive things in 2024 is that there was even more admission of COVID shots causing harm to people. It's been now almost in a couple of months, it'll be literally 5 years. Can you believe that, guys? Holy crap. In like 2 months, it'll be 5 years since they declared COVID-19 global pandemic. What the heck? That's so crazy how fast time flies. And in the 4 years since there, now some truth is coming out. So we had the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine do a report about a causal link between the COVID shots and myocarditis. And then I also covered this one. The New York Times, the Telegraph, and more mainstream media are admitting that the shots are hurting people. This was back in May, and I went through a bunch of different stories. And obviously that's a positive development. And, of course, we reserve the right to still be like, what the fuck? Why did you people stay quiet and silent for so long? Why have you been harming people and killing them? But nevertheless, the truth is coming out and it's a positive thing. So I was trying to follow those developments as they came. You can find that at our website. Also, I did reports on my articles about Bethany Christian Services. We talked about that, exposing Bethany Christian Services, history of negligence and manipulation. So just so you know, sort of how this works, I write an article on The Last American Vagabond, and then I usually will do a video report on it because I recognize that, again, some of you are lazy and you're not going to read my article, but if I talk about it for 15 or 20 minutes, you will listen. And I kind of hate that because I want my audience to be smart enough to be readers and deep thinkers. And a lot of times when I go to a channel and that's all they're doing, I'll literally just skim through the article or the video and just look for the headline of the article and go read it myself instead of listening to somebody read it for me. Or if they actually do show notes, which unfortunately a lot of people don't do, then I just look at the show notes and read it for myself. But nevertheless, I do this because I know some of you won't read it. So that's why sometimes you see an article and a video for the same content. And that's kind of the same thing. Mothers speak out against the practices of Bethany Christian Services. This is me covering my article about mothers speaking out. And then again, video reports about fluoride because I write articles and you won't read them, so I talk about them. The truth about U.S. government's latest ruling on fluoride. And then the other big thing of 2024 is we announced the Independent Media Alliance. This is a big thing that is only just started. We haven't even done anything yet. We announced the Independent Media Alliance, and really the idea started back in August whenever I got together a group of ND media veterans to talk about the political hopium. How many of you guys watched this? This was, to me, it was like an epic night. We had myself, we had Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media, we had Dan Dix of Press for Truth, we had James Corbett of Corbett Report, we had Ryan of Last American Vagabond, and we got Aaron and Melissa of Truth Stream Media to come out and do this panel with us. This was one of my fun, most favorite conversations of the year. Really grateful for them. And that was kind of the seed of the idea for what became the Independent Media Alliance, which myself, Whitney Webb, and Ryan announced in September. And so far, members of the Independent Media Alliance include Catherine Austin Fitz, Jason Bassler of the Free Thought Project, Jason Burmis, Kat Black of Off Guardian, James Corbett, Ian Davis, Richard Grove, Kit Knightley, Hjorve Morik of Geopolitics and Empire, Steve Poikinen of Slow News Day, Charlie Robinson of Macroaggressions, Carrie Wedler, and there's a few other people. And so far, all we've been able to do is just have a few panels. But in 2025, in the next couple months, we're going to be launching a brand new website, a completely censorship-proof platform. We're working with Odyssey, the Odyssey platform, and we're going to continue to have these regular panels. We're going to do some investigations. And generally speaking, we're hoping to be a source of accurate information for those who are seriously confused about why so many people are losing their minds, when it relates to what's going on in the world. So hopefully in the coming weeks, we'll be able to announce the website for the Independent Media Alliance. Stay tuned to myself or Whitney Webb or Ryan Christian for that. I think the IMA is going to do really big things this year. And one of the main things that we were excited about to focus on is really, as I said already, trying to continue to expose the lies around the Trump administration. So again, there's a few of my videos that some of these went fairly viral, talking crap about Musk and Trump and calling them out. The Trump RFK Musk Teal cabal is fooling the freedom movement back from September. I did this one earlier. Rejecting corrupt politicians and the two-party lie is not a black pill. It's a bitter white pill. I went to the Bitcoin Nashville conference and I did this video report about it called The Intersection Between Peter Thiel, PayPal, Rumble, and Bitcoin. And now that has all kind of like meshed into the Trump administration, those same forces. I did this one, the technocratic union between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And then just this past week, we did Trump administration, this was a couple of weeks ago. The IMA did a panel, Trump administration 2024 IMA discusses cabinet picks and policy proposals. So this is another example of sort of what the IMA is doing. And then more recently, I did a video about Trump 2.0. I think you can actually find it on the homepage right now. So those are just some of the important reports that I've been doing related to the IMA, those are all my top video reports. These last two ones I want to share with you, these are motivational reports. The world is a crazy place out there, but every now and then I try to ground myself and I try to maybe share something that might be a little bit more inspiring and not just ranting and raving about the news, because I know you can find that on hundreds and thousands of other channels in this busy independent media ecosystem. I try to provide something different. I try to provide hard-hitting investigative journalism, but I also do try to bring the compassion, the spirit, the mindfulness that I think is necessary. That's what the conscious resistance is about. It's not about just buying into the narratives. It's about being able to recognize that the efforts to control us are about controlling our physical body as well as our mind and our spirit. And so we need to be free in all those different ways from various forces, whether that's religion, false dogma, politicians, puppets of different kinds, dead ends, pragmatism, lack of principles, all these things. We have to be sort of on guard, but more importantly, we have to be in tune with ourselves so we know what our principles, what our values are. And so occasionally I put out reports that are more motivational and inspirational, hopefully. So these are a couple of them. This one is called I Reclaim My Attention, Energy, and Focus, and So Should You. And that was just a little thought bubble that came to me one day of just like, you know what, I need to remind my friends out there that we have the power to control our thoughts and we don't have to be sucked into what's going on in the news. That's kind of what I was starting the show earlier saying, like, we don't have to assume that 2025 is going to be this crazy fucked up thing that a lot of us maybe feel or think it could be. It could be, but maybe we can make it be something else. Maybe there's a potential for a different outcome. So don't allow yourself to be sucked into whatever's trending on Twitter or Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or et cetera, necessarily, use those things as tools, but stay in control, reclaim your energy, your focus and your attention, because that is the way they manipulate us. If we allow ourselves to be just kind of pulled aside, side to side, they're still controlling our energy. They're still controlling our emotions. They're winning. And I don't want that. I don't think you want that either. Another one I did more recently, or actually this was back in May. We must maintain balance, strength, and empathy during the days ahead. And I feel that for sure. I definitely 100% feel that. If you are ever curious, guys, for this kinds of content, go to theconsciousresistance.com, the front page. Like I said, we have our whole website broken down by categories, and there is a category called motivational. And you can go here and you can listen to little podcasts and snippets and reports and things I've done over the last 10 plus years. I haven't done as many of these as I like to. I probably will get back to it in 2025. I'm speaking to you guys. I get sucked into the crazy world and I forget, hey, wait, maybe I should say something inspirational or positive every now and then. But you can go back over the years and see all the different things I've shared. And I think some of it will give you a little bit of motivation, some inspiration, and check that one out. But yeah, we're going to play one more quick break and come back. And I'm going to share, the last thing I'll share today is my top talks of 2024. I hope you guys will listen because, when I travel around, which is one of my favorite things, to travel and to speak and to meet people face to face. And when I share my ideas and my books and I go out and I do public speaking and I sell my shirts and I sell books and I get to do handshakes and hugs and smiles, that is my favorite thing ever. And I love it. And I think I can't wait to do more of that in 2025. So we're going to talk more about that when we get back. Please stay with me. Got one more quick break here on the Conscious Resistance Live. We'll be right back. So I've recently partnered with my friend Sean Hawkins of the company Cultivated Mind. He focuses on organic mushroom extracts, which are designed to help you physically, mentally, and maybe even more than that. I've just been testing them out recently. You may have seen my interview with Sean discussing this. We went over some of the specific benefits of the various types of mushrooms that Sean uses. I think it's a really exciting product to be a part of because not only are they organic, they're non-GMO, but if you know anything about mushrooms, as more and more of us have been learning about the benefits of mushrooms, not just psychedelic mushrooms, but all types of mushrooms, then you understand that they are a great boon to your health. So Sean recently hooked me up and I've been trying the Brain Squared, which is for gut pea flower extract, ashwagandha. I also recently picked up the Radiant Energy, which is for pre and post workout. So I go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week and now starting to take these before and after. These feature cordyceps, reishi, and chaga. And finally, he's got Immune Renew, which is obviously for immunity. This one features chaga, turkey tail, reishi, maitake, shiitake, and extract of nattokinase. I encourage you to go visit the website. It is cultivated-mind.com. And of course, we have a special deal and a discount for those of you who want to purchase them through my link at cultivated-mind.com/cm/broze, BROZE. You can check out the link on the screen right now or wherever you're watching. Check out the link below the video. All right. So that is Cultivated Mind, guys. You can find that at theconsciousresistance.com. Again, I don't try to work with any company unless I know them directly. Above Phone is a friend. Cultivated Mind is a friend. All right, let's go ahead and continue. We were just talking about my top video reports of 2024. I got a couple more random ones, and then we'll talk about some of my presentations I gave. This is a general story that for those who've been paying attention, that the U.S. government has amplified their war on private crypto use. They've been arresting a number of different people under the Biden administration, going after wallets, going after people who are trying to do swaps and keep crypto privately, like Monero and other things like that. I don't know if that's going to continue under Trump because now a lot of the crypto big tech bros are in Trump's cabinet, but it's not because crypto is about to be free. It's because they're going to co-opt it, and it's going to either be through Bitcoin or CBDCs or stable coins or Ripple or USDC, something like that. You guys remember earlier this year, there was a solar eclipse. Well, I was here in Mexico. This is in April. And in the state of Michoacan, which is where I live, we got to go. There was like just a local meditation kind of hangout at a pyramid site that I'd never been to, and it was super preserved. So I did a little video visiting the Tingambato pyramids during the solar eclipse, and you can go check that out. It was a cool. It's just so much it's so fun to learn like the history that's in the state that I live here in Mexico and to go explore. And so we were there with a few people doing some meditating, chilling, hanging out, enjoying the solar eclipse. And you can find that one at theconsciousresistance.com. Another one, probably a story that should be much bigger, even on my list and a lot of other people's lists. But there's a health crisis going on, guys. I did a breakdown of recent studies that you may have heard about, microplastics found in human testicles and penises. And then after this one, brains too. So at this point, this is June 2027, microplastics discovered in human penises for the first time. University of New Mexico researchers find microplastics in canine and human testicle tissue. Neuroplastics linked to heart attack, stroke, and early death study finds. And are the microplastics found in testicles a health danger? And then like a couple months after that, there was another study that's found microplastics in human brains. So it's not looking good for us as far as exposure to toxic chemicals and, nanoplastics, microplastics. These are super tiny and they're in all kinds of material. And they're showing up in our balls and in our dicks, unfortunately. And they're in brains too. So, all right. Now my final coverage of 2024, guys. Thank you for doing the show with me tonight and hanging out with me. I know this isn't a news report. This is just my reflection on 2024. I appreciate your patience and your time and being here with me. I hope you will go to theconsciousresistance.com and you will look at the show notes and you will review all these. I'm probably going to make specific posts for my top articles, my top video reports, and my top interviews to make it easier for people. Maybe I'm doing it for no reason and none of you guys are going to pay attention. But I hope that all the work I've done over the last 12 months has been worth it. I hope it's enriched you in some way, empowered you, educated you, inspired you, activated you. To the people who I've met in person, thank you for shaking my hand, for saying kind words. I mean, I've had people cry on my shoulder this year. I've had people squeeze me tight. I've had people share about their struggles and their experiences and tell me that I've uplifted them in some way. And I mean, it's not about an ego boost for me. It's a freaking humbling experience. Like, I'm just a regular dude. I just turned 40. 20 years ago, I was addicted to crystal meth. I went to prison. I'm a working class regular dude. And for anybody out there in the world, from Wales to Denmark to Mexico to the US to Costa Rica and all the wonderful places I've been this year, to tell me that something I did or said helped them, it's just an extremely humbling experience. And I'm just super blessed and grateful for that. So, oh, shit. Well, I think my camera got turned on. My most important talks of 2024. I'm not sure why all of a sudden my camera just stopped working. That's lame. I guess I got in too much of a rant. I got a little too excited. So we'll have to continue on. Nevertheless, I do want to share with you guys my most important talks of 2024. Because like I said, I love traveling. I love getting out there in the world. And when I get to connect and meet with you guys in person, it's such a more fulfilling, enriching experience than just being on the internet, just connecting to people through the internet, not really connecting to people face to face, not being able to see you. Like, I don't know, there's just something special about it. So nevertheless, my talks that I want to highlight, the one I gave in January 2024, what won't you do to advance liberty? This was, I think, one of my best talks of the year. I encourage you to check it out. I go through my entire activist history and outline all the different steps that I've done, different projects that I've experimented on and things I've tried. And it's sort of like, just do it, take some of my ideas and use them. If they work for you, great. If not, then, modify them to your own needs. But the point is, I'm doing my best out here to say, here's a bunch of ideas I have. If they work for you, modify them for your community, make use of them, do what you can for them, etc. And if they don't, adapt them, change them how you need to. That's what's most important to me. So when I give presentation, that's kind of what I'm always thinking. It's not to say, hey guys, listen to the man on stage as if I've got all the answers. It's really to say, I've been an activist for a little while and I'm trying a bunch of different things and some of them seem to be working. So if you're looking for tools, here's some tools I have. So that's basically what that talk was way back in January, a year ago at the final Greater Reset. The event is now called the People's Reset, and I'll be speaking there again in a couple of weeks. After that, I spoke in Costa Rica in the jungle, as you can see this picture here, at the Envision Festival. And the reason I speak at these kind of events, guys, is because the Envision crowd is definitely what you might consider more hippie or maybe even new age. And some of them I would say are awake and aware. Others are maybe not so much, and they might lean more progressive. But I go there because I feel like I need to connect with those people. I don't want to just preach to the choir. And so I gave a talk called Navigating the Future of AI, Digital IDs, and Digital Money. And I think it was pretty well received by that crowd. I think that even if, again, on the surface, it might appear like, oh, these people, we have nothing in common. There's nothing I can learn from them or, that I can gain by hanging around this crowd. I do think that is part of my talent, my ability is I can go to a suit and tie event. I can go to the jungle and speak to the hippie, whatever crowd in the jungle about this message. I can go to a libertarian event. I can go to Mexico or US or the UK, and I can reach people regardless of where they're from. That's one of my talents that the creator has given me, and I'm just trying to use it to the best degree I have. So I think this is one of my best talks, Navigating the Future of AI, Digital IDs, and Digital Money. And then more recently in Sedona, I gave this talk, Exit and Build, How to Live the Principles of Liberty Now. This, I think, is another important presentation that you should check out because, again, I'm trying to draw from like my real world experience. I'm not just talking from, hypotheticals. I'm actually living from experience and speaking from experience. So I encourage you guys, if you want to actually learn how I don't talk to the IRS, how I don't use banks, how I have been able to buy land even though I only make $25,000 a year, how I avoid big tech as much possible, how I'm working towards growing my own food, how to live the exit and build strategy rather than relying on politicians, then I encourage you to actually check out my presentations because I feel like that's honestly where I shine. So that's where we're going to leave it for tonight, guys. My camera will not turn back on. It's really stupid and annoying because I did want to do one more segment before we leave. As you guys know, I like to do a segment about the books that I'm reading right now. And I did get some new books in the mail this week that I wanted to highlight, but unfortunately I cannot show them on the camera and I don't want to risk messing anything up. So I think we'll just wrap it there for 2024, my friends. I really do truly appreciate each and every one of you who support my work and go to the lengths that you do to invite. I see some of you out there tagging me and posts. Like when you see a podcast, you tag me and say, hey, you should have Derrick Broze on to talk about fluoride, or hey, you should have Derrick Broze to talk about the pyramid of power. That means the world to me. I greatly appreciate it, my friends. So thank you for all that you've done, whether you have supported me financially on a monthly or annual basis or never, or if you read my articles, if you share my work, if you watch the documentaries. I appreciate you more than anything, guys. I truly do. And I hope you have a happy new year. And I look forward to seeing what we can build in 2025. I'm going to end my final show of 2024 the way I always do, and that is with a conscious musician, a conscious artist, and that's going to be myself. I'm playing you one more song from myself. I perform music under the name 33, of course, because for me, 33 is healing, it's growth, it's transformation, it's transmutation, and I believe in reclaiming symbols and numbers and not letting these psychopaths have a monopoly on them. So I perform music under the name 33. You can find me at 33ishere.com. And this is a song I did called Reflection, featuring the words of Native American activist John Trudell. I hope you guys have a good new year, my friends. Be safe out there. Whatever you do, take care of yourself if you go out and party. And remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace, my friends.
We have to reestablish our identity.
Check 1, 2. 33.
We have to understand who we are and where we fit in the natural order of the world.
Invite you into my world.
The people who have created this system and they perpetuate this system, they are out of balance. They have made us out of balance.
I woke up this morning feeling I had something to say. I got doubts in my mind, it's time to let them fly away. It's time to unlearn poison and heal broken hearts. Go back to the end, it's time for a fresh start. This is the place we can atone for our sins. This is the place where our hero's journey begins. A space between love and hate, where there's no escape from our fate. Rather than be irate, let's create, let's build. the better world we know is possible. I've got no fear, cause we can overcome any obstacle. Now stare all my demons in the face, I'll show you what's possible. I send love from my heart, I'm intuitive, not illogical. It's just that lately I've been searching for deeper meaning. I'm sick of drugs, booze, mindless sex, and criminal scheming. Feels like I should have more at this point in time. I'm talking knowledge, not money, I'm trying to feed my mind.
See, we are power. They deal in violence and repression. We are power. They tell us, they want us to believe that we are powerless.
I hope you hear these words from my mind, from my heart to your ears. We got one life. Let's do something with it. Open up all three of my eyes and fly to the heavens. During my meditation, I see my life in chapters of 7. I connect to my inner child to heal my wounds. I recall those I've lost to dope, gone too soon. My life flashes before me, a collage of joy and pain. I recall the highs, the lows, I swear I'm going insane. I'm trying to wrap my mind around this journey. Spent too much time worried about things that don't concern me. No more time wasted, not chasing my dreams. I wake up every day knowing this world ain't what it seems. We gotta find our own path, we gotta make our own meaning. Cause we can't be sure, we might be dreaming. All I know is, when I look in your eyes, I see myself. I'm just a reflection of your impression of my higher self. Could it be that our whole reason for being, our existence, is the lesson to teach us over and over until we get this? You are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Shake off your chains, you were blind, but now you see. Grandfather, help us remember where we come from. Grandmother, walk with us until the battle is won. Well, my friends, I invite you to hear these words from Brother John Trudell, a Native American activist, with some wisdom for you.
33. We are a natural part of the earth. We are an extension of that natural energy which is spirit and which is power. That is natural power. And just as it takes millions and billions of elements to make a blizzard to happen, or to make the earthquake, to make the earth to move, then it's going to take millions and billions of us. We are power. We have that power.
You are powerful, you are beautiful, you are free.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.